Piggybacking on that, do you think we're holding ourselves hostage with commission plans and quarterly targets? You kind of talked about the short term. And the reason I asked this, I listened to an interview that Chris Voss, the author of Don't Split the Difference, former hostage negotiator, gave with John Burroughs. And he's not necessarily from his original background, obviously isn't in business, but he's runs a business now. And he believes that we're holding ourselves hostage, pun intended, with the commission plans and the quarterly targets. If we move to salary only for our salespeople, would that help address the problem?
I don't think so,
Okay.
myself, for a couple of reasons. One is this gets us back to the first question you asked me, but it is important to keep the cash flowing. So
Yeah.
we can set targets any way we want, but if we run out of cash, it doesn't matter whether we've been short term or long term. So that's number one. Number two is basically a philosophy of human motivation. I do have colleagues, it's not just Chris Voss, but I've got colleagues who will tell you that monetary incentives are way overrated. It's all about intrinsic rewards. All I can say is that's not the planet I've lived on for over 50 years. Anyone who tells you that incentives don't affect behavior, I think, is basically living mentally in Disney World. But in sales in particular, you've got to think about compensation as a necessary but not sufficient cause of getting the behaviors you want, which is why coaching, performance management, etc. is so important. And then when it comes to sales comp in particular, I would argue the bigger issue there is not how we set the time frame. The market will ultimately set the time frame. I mean, we can pretend that we're setting a longer term time frame, but it's going to be determined by the market. I think the bigger issue is how sales comp works in most companies. And the data about this has been remarkably consistent throughout my career. If you ask yourself, how do you maximize your variable commission compensation? In 70+% of sales forces, the answer is very simple, just sell more. Yeah. And by the way, it's all about volume, end of paragraph, end of sentence, not the profitability of that sale, not your company's cost to serve that customer, simply volume. Now, notice what the message is to the sales force. And by the way, they understand this message very clearly.
We just need bodies and seats. We don't care who those bodies are.
There is no such thing as a bad customer. So they bring in a whole diversity of customers, fragments the business model. This is
finance, that's your problem to collect payments. Customer success, that's your problem to fix those problems. And
that's the classic scaling Bermuda Triangle for venture. So I don't think the issue is, let's look long term. There's good academic research about stock incentives, et cetera, and there's very little evidence that the market actually is too short-term oriented. As usual, management makes a difference, and a lot of this in sales is simply not managed well, which, by the way, is an opportunity. Notice the implication of this if you're an entrepreneur. You'll be amazed how far you can get, how much competitive advantage there is in doing the basics a little bit better than the next company.